All right, let's dive into a real puzzle. How can a nation, sitting on the biggest oil fortune on the entire planet, also be suffering through one of the worst economic crises we've seen in modern times? We're talking about Venezuela, and we're going to break down exactly how this happened.
First, just to get a sense of the scale here, look at this number. 303 times billion barrels of proven oil reserves. Now that's not just a lot of oil. It's more than Saudi Arabia, it's more than Canada. It is, by a long shot, the largest proven reserve on Earth.
And that, of course, brings us to the big question, the one we're here to unpack. With all of that black gold right under their feet, how could a country end up in such a catastrophic situation? Well, the answer is complicated. It's a mix of geology, politics, and some wild global economics.
To really get to the bottom of where things went wrong, we have to go back. We have to rewind the clock. See, Venezuela wasn't always an oil giant, and its journey from a nation of farms to a global energy player is actually key to understanding the mess it's in today.
And this transformation, it happened fast. After 1908, foreign money poured in, and in a blink, an agrarian society became an oil economy. By the late 70s, their state-run oil company, PDVSA, was a modern global force. But then, a huge shift happened in the early 2000s. New laws gave the state way more control, basically tying the entire country's fate to how well the government could manage this one single resource.
But here's where we see the first big crack start to appear in the foundation. Because it turns out, not all oil is created equal. And the kind of oil Venezuela has boatloads of, well, it comes with some pretty serious strings attached.
You see, the huge majority of Venezuela's reserves are what's known as extra-heavy crude oil. I want you to think less of a liquid and more like, well, like tar or molasses. And as you can probably guess, getting something that thick and sticky out of the ground and turning it into gasoline is not easy, and it is definitely not cheap. And the scale of this challenge is just immense. A whopping 87% of all of Venezuela's oil is that difficult, extra-heavy stuff. That means only about 13% is the lighter conventional oil that's way cheaper and easier to get. This geological reality is a fundamental piece of the puzzle.
So how in the world do you even get it out? You need these really complex, really expensive techniques called enhanced oil recovery. Basically, you have to inject stuff like steam way down into the ground just to heat up the oil, make it thinner, less like tar, so you can finally pump it to the surface. This takes a ton of money, technology, and expertise.
So, having that tricky oil is one problem, but that problem got way, way worse because of what was happening on the inside. This quote here really gets to the heart of it. Technological deficiencies, poor policies, and management have led to shortages and high inflation. It was a total perfect storm, crippling the industry from within.
At the exact same time, the country was putting all of its economic eggs in one basket. Venezuela became the textbook definition of a petrostate. An incredible 95% of its entire export revenue came from just one thing: oil. And this made the entire economy incredibly fragile and completely vulnerable to the global price of oil.
And in 2013, that vulnerability became a full-blown catastrophe. Global oil prices tanked. For a country that absolutely needed high prices to pay for everything, from social programs to that expensive oil extraction we talked about, this was the tipping point. The money just vanished, and production went into a nosedive.
And what followed was just this devastating domino effect. First, the big international partners like ExxonMobil, they packed up and left, taking all their expertise with them. Then, these crucial oil for loan deals, especially with partners like China, completely fell apart. Then came the terrible irony. The country with all the oil started having massive gas shortages. And from there, the economy spiraled into hyperinflation, and crushing international sanctions just squeezed what was left of the industry.
You know, a crisis this deep rarely stays inside its own borders. As everything inside Venezuela got worse and worse, the pressure started to spill over, turning an economic disaster into a really tense geopolitical situation with huge global stakes.
All that pressure at home has led Venezuela to look outward, and in doing so, it's reignited a really old, long-dormant fight with its neighbor, Guyana, over this huge, resource-rich piece of land called the Essequibo.
So here's the deal. On one side, Venezuela has this historical claim to the Essequibo region, which just so happens to be loaded with oil and minerals. On the other side, you've got Guyana, which, with the help of huge offshore oil discoveries by companies like ExxonMobil, is on the verge of its own economic boom, all driven by oil in these very same disputed waters.
And make no mistake, this isn't just a little local argument. When you get global powers like the United States involved, it raises the stakes for everyone. It messes with regional energy projects and poses a very real threat to stability across all of Latin America and the Caribbean. The entire region is on high alert.
So after all of that, where does this leave us? Well, it brings us right back to that fundamental paradox of Venezuela, this place of incredible wealth and incredible crisis.
When you really boil it down, Venezuela's story is just this incredibly powerful cautionary tale. It proves that just sitting on a mountain of natural resources is no guarantee of success. What really matters is how you manage that wealth, whether you can build a diverse economy, and how you navigate the tricky world of global politics. It's a textbook example of what's often called the resource curse.
And so we end right back where we started, but now with a whole lot more context for this one big question. For Venezuela, this amazing geological gift, the largest oil reserve on the planet, has it ultimately been a blessing that built a nation, or was it a curse that brought that same nation to its knees?